I run something called the Digital Cultures Research Centre at my university, and we're interested in play, pervasive media, and participatory media. Though we work around those sort of three strands. And this particular work that I'm presenting today comes out of a collaboration I've been making with a woman called Mandy Rose. Mandy runs this blog which is called Collab Docs. Mandy is a creative fellow working with DCRC, and her project was to what does it mean to be a documentary director when you're working online globally in a participatory capacity? What does that mean? How are you a director in that situation? So she's been making some work and some experiments around that. And through that work and experiment, we've now actually written 2 articles together, and what I'm talking about is based on the 2 things that we're publishing, one for the BFI Companion on Documentary and one for a special edition of the Documentary Film Studies Journal that's coming out next year based on our IDOCS conference, which I'll talk about when I get to the end. That's all background. I began my working life in the London of the late 1970s working in community video. And back then our work was focused around making the means of media production available to a wider diversity of voices than the narrow cadre of media industry producers of the time. Now, of course, the success of that project has been achieved beyond its wildest dreams. The means of production and distribution are ubiquitous, at least in the northern world and the Western world and the developed world. But still, we live in a world where there are more fragments of actuality, moving image material in circulation than ever before. There is more documentary in the world than there ever has been. So clearly, barriers to entry into the marketplace have been lowered. Lots more filmmakers can get access to production. And this is, of course, exciting, stimulating, and awesomely mind-blowing. And on the whole, I'm a massive enthusiast for the explosion of human ingenuity and inventiveness available to us every day online. But I want to raise some of the problems of these new conditions for us and think about critical and pragmatic perspectives on them. And in order to do that, I'm going to address 4 topics in my presentation: attention, database aesthetics, the politics and politics of collaboration, and the data documentary. So those are the 4 broad headings that I'm going to be working through. So first of all, thinking about attention. The attention economy is a key concept for me in thinking about this work. And I got really focused on the attention economy 3 years ago when I was trying to raise money for a web drama. And I was trying to think about commercial means of actually getting sponsorship and advertisers involved in my web drama concept. And then this idea about the attention economy, which had kind of been floating around in my background, became really, really potent and pointed. The problem of profusion is finding an audience. In the olden days, if you got on television, you were more or less guaranteed an audience. 1 million people watched the test card in the UK. Television, as traditional media political economy argued, is a mechanism for delivering eyeballs to advertisers. The problem is that in the long tail of cyberspace, that there is too much content to attract attention in numbers that are meaningful to mass media advertisers. So attention is the premium commodity of the long tail of cyberspace. This everyday feeling has its explanation in the astonishingly simple question that lies at the heart of the idea that attention is a rare commodity. The question is, what is it that information consumes? Attention. The more information or media, the less attention we have for it. If we assume that attention is a zero sum, which is debatable, of course, there is a limit to how much attention a given population can give. As media events proliferate, they will perforce command smaller and smaller attention segments. This is the position from which leading web polemicist of the idea of the attention economy, Michael Goldhaber, proceeds. He says, ours is truly not an information economy. By definition, economics is the study of how a society uses its scarce resources, and information is not scarce, especially on the net, where it is not only abundant but overflowing. We are drowning in information, yet constantly increasing our generation of it. So a key question arises, is there something else that flows through cyberspace, something that is scarce and desirable? There is. No one would put anything on the internet without the hope of obtaining some, and it's called attention. And the economy of attention, not information, is the natural economy of cyberspace. The problem for producers that this brings up can be understood in terms of thinking about networks. There's a guy called Laszlo Barabasi who wrote a book called Linked. He's a biologist. He wrote about networks and network connectivity as a fundamental principle of biological life. However, one of the things that he discovered in his biology was that actually networks have something that he calls the preferential attachment to already connected nodes. What that means is that if I'm a little node in a network and I'm entering into that network, I'm looking for nodes that are already really well connected. I'm not going to connect to somebody that's not got a lot of, to an entity that's not got a lot of connections. So a new node in a network like a Facebook page is more than likely to link to popular users with many friends to an already highly connected node. A few big internet trees get to grow strong in the sunshine of audience attention, whilst there are a myriad of tiny organisms that remain invisible to an outside observer of the system. And Barabasi and his partner in this research argued, they said the most intriguing result of our web mapping project, when they took this principle of networking and biology and applied it to the web, the most intriguing result of our web mapping project was the complete absence of democracy, fairness, and egalitarian values on the web. We learned that the topology of the web, the shape of the web, prevents us from seeing anything but a mere handful of the billion documents out there. So this creates a set of economic conditions and a set of problems for producers. The web media user constantly finds herself hailed, solicited, invited to connect. Community management has become the starting point for web production and web management. As producers, you need to understand how you're going to create a community, manage a community, get a community to stick with your project. That's a result of the fact of the attention economy, is that you need as producers to be thinking about how you manage a community and how you create a community, how do you get a community to stick to your project. Not because media providers want us all to play nice and have lots of warm friendships, it's because we all need, in a crowded transient marketplace, characterized by a nomadic audience, to create brand engagement. So what does this mean for producers? It means that the long foot slog of independent production marketing is replaced by hours spent online, building community, offering connectivity, taking feedback, giving attention back to your audiences. Building an audience, in other words. And this is a new kind of job that didn't exist before. It's a new kind of job in the workflow that didn't exist before. It starts in pre-production and it continues forever. When I was at a conference last year at the SCMS, Society for Cinema and Media Studies in America, in Los Angeles, there was a panel on transmediality, which was the most rammed panel of the entire event, of course. And one of the producers there said, what's so great about, what transmediality means for me is that I deliver not only a script, talent, a good idea and so on to a network, but I actually deliver them proof of concept of an audience too, because I've already got 100,000 people following me online and following my ideas, and I've been co-creating my script with those people online, so the network goes, oh, look, 100,000 people are interested in this, then maybe there's a million people or 2 million people who are interested. So that's one of the consequences of the attention economy. I next want to talk about think about the idea of database aesthetics, navigation and interactive documentary. So within this world of profusion of fragments of actuality, one of the things that we see is documentary being retooled by the aesthetics of database design. One of the problems brought about by the superabundance of material is navigation. Just finding your way to what you want to see is a problem, and it's a different kind of experience. So the user finds herself increasingly subject to the human-machine assemblage of search engines, meta tags, and databases, where program choices are filtered by algorithms and user recommendation. The online media consumer is likely to develop a very high tolerance to fragmented and random media experiences. The film theorist Thomas Althusser from Amsterdam has published a great essay on his experience of trying to understand how to navigate YouTube. And he says, the traditional form of narrative organization don't really hold up in what he calls the boiling sea of magma that is YouTube. where our journeys are dominated by the workings of contiguity and chance. He chooses to investigate one video and is led on a rhizomatic journey, circling round sources, forking off into new territories and returning to the same nuances and themes. This experience, he concludes, is to find oneself in the presence of strange organisms, pulsing, moving and mutating, depending on the tags one enters or encounters, as YouTube sorts, filters and aggregates the choices that I am not even aware of making. This beguiling post-human description somewhat underemphasizes our agency, I think. After all, our choices are determined by this powerful mix of kind of either wanting to know something or wanting to feel something. When we're browsing, you know, we're looking for joy or desire or connection in some way. Now, this click-driven experience of online media navigation has spawned its own form of documentary, which is fundamentally based upon the ideas that were derived in literary studies from hypertext in the 1990s. Basically, you assemble a whole bunch of clips into a database and you offer your users ways of navigating them. Simple. However, getting it right is really, really not simple at all. And we're beginning to see the development of a new set of arts around how to get this right. The links can be structured through content, color, space, time, character, any number of values, any number of tags can be attached to your clip to make them navigable and searchable by the connectable to the next clip. And so my next big idea for you is design is content.